And we are live for another VC / founder wisdom pod. We have both with us today. Alex Fauvel is with us. He's a general partner at TwoHop Ventures. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about crypto. We're going to talk about media. We're going to talk about Bankman, if we're lucky, and games, I guess. So this podcast has been brought to you by podpire.com. If you want to start, scale, be invited to a podcast like this one, find sponsors, etc. Podcasts are quite amazing way to grow your brain, your network, your bank, pretty much everything in between. They're the way. I'm investing 60% of my time nowadays into podcasts. So I'd love to help you with that, podpire.com. Alex, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about what you're into nowadays?
Sure. So I'm general partner at TwoHop Ventures. We are a venture capital fund that invests exclusively in blockchain businesses. We don't touch tokens or crypto of any kind. We have investors with regular fiat money, and we invest regular fiat money in businesses that we think are building the future on the blockchain. We've just finished our distributing our first fund. So we're now in the harvest stage of that fund. There's another 5 years to go to harvest those investments. And although the crypto market is down, I'm very hopeful that our startups are doing very well, because they were always the pariahs in the crypto space to begin with.
Let's start with our friend Bankman here. My thesis, and I might be wrong on that, but I'll just restate it because I'd love making bets and seeing if I'm wrong or not. It is that Bankman, I mean, yeah, he's got that autism and everything in between, but I don't think he wanted to defraud people. Now, I'm sort of hesitant on that thesis, because new facts came into light, and maybe he wasn't even aware that he was misleading those people. I think he did some mistakes, but I don't think he tried to defraud folks, and time will tell. I do think he's going to be prosecuted. I do think he's going to go to jail. I do think that it's also very hard to know the reality. What are your thoughts on him? And also, let me just second that there's Mr. Wonderful video. I also like Mr. Wonderful, Kev O'Leary. Quite the contrarian right there. I'm a contrarian too. I'm not sure about what he said lately, but it seems like he's still somewhat supporting FTX, while most NFTX and Sam.
You have to remember that Mr. Wonderful got paid $15 million to support FTX. But yeah, on the Sam Bankman-Fried topic in general, I think he did know what he was doing. I think he knew that he was defrauding customers. I also think that he thought that his connections were good enough and his political donations were good enough that he thought he would get away with it. Right. I think there's a very distinct possibility that he is in prison for the rest of his life. Okay. And I would also say that CZ of Binance is probably 100 times worse than Sam Bankman-Fried.
I agree with the second statement. CZ also, he's gonna spend jail time. Really bad guy. Okay.
But Binance is still around, so what does that mean for the crypto industry as a whole?
Doesn't mean any good. I'm really bearish on the crypto community. I am bullish on the idea and blockchain, so I'm glad that we will have to talk about that today, because I'm still a strong supporter of.
Should we get straight into that? Because that's probably more interesting than talking about these personalities that people already know.
Yeah, just to finish on the topic, I haven't studied it for some time, just because, like you said, it's not super interesting or relevant. But Kev O'Leary, I think he's still supporting SBF after it all fell down. So Is he protecting his ego, according to you?
He's protecting his ego and his investment, since the bankruptcy lawyers believe that they might be able to relaunch FTX, which, when you look at it as its core business, it was a Ponzi scheme. So I'm not sure what that says about the lawyers that are actually looking after that.
Right. I agree with the point, though, that, Bankman, I think he thought he could get away from it. I also think that he thought from a perspective of, okay, I might be good, like defrauding these folks, but we're gonna get out of this, you know, and the flip side is not gonna happen. So there's a potential for that.
As long as everyone's making money, then no one's complaining. And
yeah.
how long can everyone make money for? Potentially forever, until you get everyone in the world, but then you're at the top of it, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And it's quite interesting to also evaluate, like, where else in history did these Ponzi's happen but never got caught because they got the upside of it. Any examples come to mind?
There's a number. For example, the fiat currency system, I would probably say, is similar to a Ponzi scheme. Yeah, I'm not going to say it's identical, but it's very similar. And it's a case of things like multi-level marketing businesses like Herbalife, right? They're still going, but when you actually analyze their business model, they're quite clearly a Ponzi scheme. So there's a bunch. It's, in my opinion, with Ponzi schemes, it's just a matter of when, not if, they get caught.
How would blockchain and impartiality bring a potential remedy to this?
So very good question. In my opinion, blockchain creates transparency over your books as a company. So everyone keeps on talking about triple ledger accounting, triple entry accounting, but no one really knows what that means. All it means is that the evolution of money has been such that you had one person looking after the accounting of the business. And then when you had double entry accounting, you had debt. So you had two sides of the book and then two parties. So you've got two people creating books, making sure that the accounting on both companies is correct. But the debtor only ever looks at the debt. The asset holder only ever looks at the assets, so on and so forth. With triple entry ledgers, it effectively means that both books must be the same. Otherwise, there is an error. And in Bitcoin, that error is this transaction is not valid. So it's very, you can create it programmatically into this blockchain technology. It doesn't mean that 100% of fraud is going to go away, but it does mean that we're going to have the tools to remove it from society on a scale like nothing we've ever seen.
And if there's a human behind that, does that defeat the whole purpose?
No, absolutely not. There is always a human behind it. Society is governed by law, not computer code. So if someone has their assets stolen and they can point to it on the blockchain, in the future, it's not the case today, put my hands up to that. In the future, the government will, a judge will sign a document and force companies to move those coins into an address of the defendant's choosing.
Shouldn't an AGI govern that?
Absolutely not. An AGI is just controlled by a human. It's effectively, the Yellow Brick Road, Wizard of Oz type situation. There's a guy behind the curtain controlling everything.
I think it starts from a human, but it grows better by definition than a human.
Sure, but until we choose to be governed by a AGI, it's not going to happen. And I don't think society as a whole is ever going to give that control up.
So tell me about what you're onto nowadays. How do you split your day? What do you spend your time on?
So I actually feel like it's gotten a lot harder for a fund like ours to raise money. So we've kind of elected to not raise a second fund until the market conditions change, because we don't want to spend a year trying to convince investors that we've got a good offering when, they can Google something in 10 minutes and our hour is wasted with them. So I'm going to attempt to solve probably the biggest issue in the Bitcoin space, which is onboarding. And onboarding in a way that you don't need to know anything about the technology behind it. So this is a company I've created and we're currently in development of, which is effectively a card game. And when I say a card game, I don't mean a digital card game that you play on a screen and it's just you versus the other person. What's it, Hearthstone and stuff like that? It's nothing like that. It's more like a game with black and white cards. And I'm not going to mention them because they are very well known. So this is the card game and it's incredibly simple. You have a yes and no question. Everyone has a yes and no card. And then once the question has been read to everyone, they vote yes or no on that question anonymously. So you put your card in the center of the table without anyone seeing the way you voted. And then the person that read the question votes, predicts what they believe that the group voted as a whole. And if they get it correct, then they get a point. And that point is the question card. And then it continues. So you can imagine, right, 30 years ago, this game probably couldn't exist because everyone's kind of on the same page with their worldviews. And then today, we're as divided as we could ever be. So the question is, what is it that you believe and what is it that you don't? And that's the entire game, effectively. There are some expansion packs and some restrictions to certain questions, let's say, because obviously you don't want to be asking a bunch of 12-year-olds, I don't know, when they lost their virginity or something. That's probably not appropriate.
Oh, you're interesting. Okay, so you're spending like most of your time on this.
Yeah. So we should be launching the website tomorrow. And then very shortly after, we'll be doing a Kickstarter for the game. The goal is going to be kind of low, but that's just part of the Kickstarter algorithm. And we hope to deliver the card game itself before Christmas. And I think probably one of the things that I should mention is how it's connected to what I've been doing before. And you can imagine that every single question is a user input, right? So once we've launched the actual card game on Kickstarter and sold it, the platform will launch, and the platform will allow you to buy a question, and that question you own, and we will pay you every time that question is printed in the game and sold, but we will also pay you every time someone votes on it digitally. And that's kind of the way this will work, in that you pay us for a question and then you own that question outright on the platform, because a question can only be asked once.
Interesting. Probably cents that you'll pay, but still interesting model.
Yes.
Why?
For the votes, for the question itself, it should be around $1. The maximum charge will be $1.73, which is 123 characters, because we charge 50 cents plus 1 cent per character.
Okay. What percentage of that is capitalistic and what percentage is like changing the world with that game?
The whole thing. It's both. You can change the world by being capitalistic. This is the thing that Sam Bankman-Fried does not understand, is that by virtue of being capitalistic, I can solve your problem and then your life is better, and I make money for it because you are prepared to pay me to solve your problem. Maybe, I don't solve it 100%. No, what problem is ever solved 100%? So
isn't
there's
like
always room for people to improve.
Didn't he try to exactly do that?
Effective altruism is what he was involved in, and he got involved in that with some guy before he was at Jane Street. And the whole concept there is you make as much money as possible by almost any means possible, and then you give all your money away, and that's the good thing you do. I don't believe in that at all. I believe that you should be able to make money ethically from day one. Yep. And if you do that, there is no limit to the amount of money you can make.
Yeah. And that goes back to his crappy risk management. I don't think he had any notions of that, which is odd. You'd expect a guy like him to be very good at this.
Especially given who his parents were and the types of connections he did have. He had the ability to employ the best accountants, the best business administrators, the best legal defenses for the business. Only now does he go to the best legal defenses. That shows you everything that you need to know about him.
Yeah. Talking about that, how would you describe yourself as a person? You're quite particular.
Uh, yeah, I would say probably stubborn, but that's because I'm the youngest of five. So there's a lot of infighting between my family. Also, I don't know. It's very. I'd say I'm generally happy. I'd never want to work for another person. I want to have a positive effect on the world. Obviously, I think most people do. But also, I'm not in this just for the money. I'm in it for the money. I'm never going to lie about that. But I'm in it to do something important, and the confirmation that I've done something important is the money I receive in return.
I'm not sure if I can agree with that one. You know, it's the classic, like, money keeps the score. I'm not sure if that
It
is the
kind of
full
is.
picture.
It is definitely is not the full picture. Of course, people can do
What
great things
percentage of
without.
it is it? You know, like, can you try a percentage on that?
I would say the Pareto principle, 80-20. 80% is the drive and the thing that you want to do. 20% is the reward.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. By the way, we're similar. I'm also a youngest and I'm very stubborn. Your company, the current card game, which is super interesting in itself, how do you think it's going to get you there? I want to know the full Elon master plan.
No one ever says the full Elon master plan, not even Elon. I mean, those papers that he puts out about how he wants to change the world and everything. There's sometimes, I think, misdirection or just things that he doesn't know whether are possible, and he gets other people to do the work for him effectively. So the Hyperloop is a great example. The Boring Company is a lot simpler, right? And he put his name on that, and that's kind of a failure. But I do like the fact that he's doing these things, because it does shine a light on some of the things that maybe the governments themselves should be investing in with all this money that they're printing. How will the card game do it? Well, I'll say that I designed the card game to go viral based on your content that you give the platform. And the reason you want to give the platform your content is because you make money from it. It's very cheap to do. Anyone can do it. They don't have to spend any of their own money to do it, because part of the whole platform is that you can use it for free, and you can even build up a balance as you go, but it's not a big balance by any means. But then you can spend that money on the platform. And if you're good enough, if you ask the right question, then you can make a lot of money. You can make many multiples of the money that you spent, even though you haven't necessarily put any money into the platform yourself. And yeah, I think that I'm relying on the community that we build to recognize what this game could do, because there's a lot of questions in my game about conspiracy theories, partly because they are the most divisive questions, right? A classic question that would be not necessarily a conspiracy theory. Well, actually, no. I'll tell you the question which is the question when we first prototyped it. I suddenly realized this game is going to change everything. And it was the question, do you believe the official narrative of 9/11? Because I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist, and I don't believe the official narrative of that day. And we were playing with 9 people. They're all kind of normal people, you know, they're not by any means right wing or, you know, down that conspiracy hole or whatever. And it was 100% no. I was just expecting 2, maybe 3 no's. 100% no out of 9 people. And when you play that kind of game in front of people, face to face, you know it's not being manipulated by bots online. It makes you think, what the hell else does everyone believe? You know, if we've been told by the media that this story is true, and they went to war several times over that, and the public no longer believes it, what does that mean for how we conduct ourselves in the future? Maybe the only thing necessary for us to be better as a society is to recognize when we've been fooled. because I believed the 9/11 thing, for days and months and weeks and years afterwards. It's only recently that I've come to question it.
But I believe the question is not that good for two reasons. One, I don't like yes and no's at my level. I prefer percentages. And second, ask me like, do you believe anything the media says is truth? I will say fuck no. Same for the government. I don't trust these two idiots of departments, they just want to govern. They want your silence, and they don't want any opposition. And rightfully so. It's really tough to run a country, especially when you have people trying to burn it. But
the people
I
that
really
are trying,
like
the people that are trying to burn it may not be in the public. They may be in the civil service, right? They may be trying to cement their position for eternity, which is effectively, communism and tyranny. But there's a lot of people there's a lot of people in public service that would like a job for generations,
Yeah, true.
And for regular people, there's nothing worse.
Yeah.
But so you say you like percentages. There is versions of the rules where instead of guessing yes or no majority, you guess the percentage of the people that you're playing with.
I love that. I would buy that game. Because it stimulates neurons, stimulates conversations. And that question is good for that very reason. Where can I buy it? Like on Kickstarter? Will there be an online version?
On Kickstarter, there will be an online version. The online version will be free to play. But the hope is that you create an account and buy your own question. There will be a Kickstarter in about 30 days. The plan is for the Kickstarter to end with enough time for us to ship the cards to everyone in the world before Christmas.
Okay.
Because obviously Christmas is the key time that everyone gets together and, has these political conversations, and it pisses everyone off. But
they'll end up in a drunken fight.
Yeah.
You'll be responsible for family breakups.
No, so the thing is that it's very, very offensive for people to bring these conversations up themselves, right? To go, oh, well, do you believe this or do you believe that? Because if you believe this, then, we're done. But with this game, it's like, one, you didn't bring up the conversation yourself. Two, there are so many questions that if you want to have a big argument about one question, then you need to reevaluate who you are as a person, because you're concentrating on the one thing or maybe a couple of things that you disagree with, when in reality, we've got so much more in common than you might think.
Love it. I just got like one last question. If you can rapid fire it. Actually,
Sure.
It's 2 in 1. So how do you ask these great questions in the game context? And me as a podcaster, how can I ask better questions?
How can you ask better questions as a podcaster? I would say that you have to do research on your guests, like really in depth. Obviously, depending on what kind of podcast you're doing, that's a bit more difficult. Say, for example, Lex Friedman, he probably has a team of people and a few days to research each person, and they're massive public figures anyway. So there's a lot of information about them. For yourself, how do you ask better questions? I think that in engineering, because I studied engineering and actually did engineering, we're told of the 5 whys, right? So if you can ask the right 5 questions, which start with why does whatever, you will always get to the root of the problem. There's a problem of whether you're asking the right whys. Whatever the case, a why question is always better than a what, who, when, where question. A why gets to the root of why something happened, or how something happened. And
the questions for the game, I guess, is like, what is the most divisive topics nowadays, or something like that?
Potentially. So as I've mentioned, you can make money from these questions. I believe that the most valuable questions will be religious in nature, simply because they don't have a time limit, right? So I've got a question here. So this is what the card looks like, and there's a QR code on there if you want to scan it. But the question is, will China invade Taiwan by 2030? Right?
No, it won't.
I think it might, but
No,
we'll have to see.
60% certainty.
60% certainty.
Yeah, I'd love you to also add that feature, that certainty. That'd be cool.
It's part of the physical game already.
Okay,
if you're
perfect.
if you're playing online, there's lots of ways we can, ask questions, whether it's percentages or ranked options and things like this. We're starting with yes and no, simply because it's the easiest, it's the least complicated for people to comprehend. And actually, if we're talking about percentage certainty and stuff, people always estimate that in the first place. So it's never really an accurate representation of what they think. If they go one way or the other, you would expect that the wisdom of the crowds would eventually error out those issues. So yeah, it's good to think in percentage certainty or possibility as opposed to probability as opposed to possibility. But it's a double-edged sword when you're collecting information from people.
Love it. You can add my question. I have one for you for free. Okay, what was it? Can you code a God AI?
When you code it, that's good. That's a good question.
Yeah,
the question I've got at the moment is, can AI be sentient? But that's you've asked a question in a very different way, which I think is probably more important.
And I got this divisiveness when I asked that one on my LinkedIn, and the question is, who would ask that shit on LinkedIn? Not someone in their right minds. But I did, and I got 46, 54. 54
to which
was
side?
no. Yeah,
54 was no.
Yeah, which is
but that's
interesting.
That's very interesting that you got a response saying who would ask that question on LinkedIn, when I think it's a great question, but context, read the room and stuff. I don't know. You can never please everyone, right? And then the results of that are actually quite positive, I would think, because it would mean that, at least from my understanding of computers, they're effectively mechanical machines, right? Then it would be correct that no, you can't.
Yeah, I would answer yes, and the sentience 100% yes with 100% certainty.
Very interesting.
And some people would say you're an idiot because I understand computer science and yeah, it's coded from a human, but yeah, and I would be like,
there's a complexity in the scale of the nature that is difficult to understand. For example, our brain, right? It's just bigger than and more dense than other brains in the animal kingdom. Yet supposedly we're a million times more conscious or whatever than other things.
More on that for another episode. From now, where can people find out more about you?
LinkedIn and Twitter is probably the best way. But